KFC. All chicken, all human rights violations.
Well, let's ease in then. When I wrote this in our document here, it was new news, but now it's quite old. But Falcon 9 Block 5 has been pictured, and I've sent you a picture, Ryan, and it'll be in the show notes, and you can go look at it. And I want to point out a few differences between this rocket and the other ones.
For clarity,
yep.
Block basically means version, correct?
Oh, God. Falcon 9 versioning is just an enormous mess, and it's not really worth trying to keep up with it. But like the specific intricacies of all of it, but in general, yes, there are sort of blocks which roughly correspond effectively to versions of the rocket, and the ones that people might be familiar with is like the very first version was very short, and it had a like a square, like a tic-tac-toe, a noughts and crosses.
Better.
I'm sorry, a noughts and crosses like layout of the engines at the bottom and stuff, and then they've gone to their octa web and they lengthened it, and then they did a slightly longer version again with much more powerful engines. And been a few other changes. But yeah, Block 5 is the latest, greatest version that's meant to completely revolutionise the reusability thing. Like, they can technically reuse the existing ones, but the big selling point of this is they can do it much more quickly, much more cheaply, and hopefully fly them more than just twice.
So what are the big features? What am I looking at that's new?
The big features that you will see just looking at it, I'm not going to go into internal differences, but the big ones, so the interstage, which is the bit at the top of this picture, there's like the orange thing right at the top, which is the clamp down. Just below that, there's that black section, which is the interstage, and that's the shroud that covers the second stage engine. And that used to be white, and now it's black.
I did think, big visual difference. It's a bit more cigarette-like this time round.
That's true. And then you'll notice the raceway thing where so that black strip down the side there, that's where all like the lot of cable runs and stuff go down there. And that used to be white, and it's been made black now as well.
Strikes make stuff faster, so that makes complete sense.
And the other big, you can't see it because the legs aren't attached, but the legs on this version will be all black as well, rather than white.
It's revolutionary.
So I don't know if you... But the other change that I think I don't know, I hope you have thoughts on it. Maybe you won't at all. I find it quite funny is they've moved the logo. The SpaceX logo used to be in the bottom third of the rocket, and now they've moved it up into the middle. And if you go look at a picture of a landed Falcon 9, you will notice where that logo is exactly where the soot does not gather.
Oh, that is classic Elon. The issue I have is that it seems to be halfway up, and I'm having to... I'm just going to do this out by hand a bit. Yeah, so looking at it, and there's a bit of perspective on the photo, they've put the logo halfway up the physical rocket. But that means it's just above halfway up the white section. So to me, it feels off-centre.
I don't like this new design at all. Really. The black interstage and raceway bottom. I think the black landing legs will look really cool, but the interstage being different looks weird to me. I don't understand. We'll see. And they've also moved a few other bits and pieces, like the Falcon 9 logo and the American flag are moved down. They used to be on the interstage, and now they're on the first stage.
See, I assumed that you were pretending to have an opinion on this for comedic effect, but now I realise that you really mean it. It shouldn't surprise me at all.
It really bothers me that the interstage is black. Like, it looks wrong. And above it will be the second stage, which will be white again. So it will be like when this is just the first stage that's pictured. It's at McGregor doing a static fire test. And so yeah, above that will be the rest of the rocket, which will all still be white. So it'll just have this weird black band 2/3 of the way up the rocket.
I think that to the layperson who will see this once every couple of months on the news, this looks more spacey. And I think SpaceX are very concerned about the things they're doing looking spacey.
It is more reminiscent of the Apollo stuff, isn't it? It's like Saturn V. But...
Yeah. And also the robot.
Yeah, I don't like it. I find the fact that they've moved the logo the funniest thing, though, because that's such a trivial thing, and it's so obviously done just so it's put in the place where it doesn't get covered in soot when it lands.
What I want to know is how many committee meetings were had to make that decision and finalise it. How many people had to sit around a desk at once to decide that that was the correct thing to do? Or did Elon just go, I want it higher?
I read something interesting about like the way SpaceX operates, and I think a lot of Elon's companies, but SpaceX I think in particular, where apparently, I don't know if this is true, but apparently the employees there have permission, if they're in a meeting that they think is wasting their time, they have permission from Elon to just leave. So if that's true, I suspect there probably weren't very many meetings about the positioning of that logo. I suspect someone said it's going to go halfway up the rocket. Everyone went, well, whatever, doesn't change our job, and that's how it happened.
I suppose that makes up for the many, many issues with the working conditions at SpaceX then, doesn't it? If you get to walk out of a meeting every now and then.
It doesn't make up for all the issues that are working at SpaceX.
No. That, and the fact they put some black on it, it's all fixed now. Maybe all the engineers wanted it to look more spacey, and they went, okay, we'll do it for you because we care.
Perhaps.
I'm worried that you're seething inside because I'm criticising SpaceX.
No, they're valid criticisms. Like, I would not want to work there. I think at this point, if you're interested in working at SpaceX, you probably know that it's a really hard place to work. I know that I wouldn't want to, for that reason. Like, it is. I think it's really tough, and I think it's unfair as well in many ways. But
some people thrive on that, and if you can go and you can give everything to a job like that for 2 years, I imagine you can get a lot out of it. It's just whether they're happy with what I assume is quite a high turnover of staff. Maybe that's good. Maybe that gets some fresh ideas in. It's whether they then end up with a bit of a sort of experience gap, where there's the few people that stay on for a long time and a lot of very new people.
I think that's exactly what you end up with. I mean, if you look at the live streams and stuff, you get a reasonable sense of the people that work there, and they are all quite young people. And I think articles I've read, I think it is quite a big turnaround. I think that people come and go quite a lot. I think to work there, you probably just have to be like young, straight out of college or university or whatever, and probably not have a family and stuff like that. Because of the amount of time that you end up putting into that company. And I think as soon as you sort of think, actually, I want to have a family and do other things, it's like, well, it's not compatible with working at SpaceX, I don't think.
If you want to do anything other than work at SpaceX,
Yeah.
don't work at SpaceX. I say this as someone that was almost accidentally a teacher. I mean, I'm not saying they're completely equivalent, but there are some similarities there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I believe you.
Well, that was the light part of the opening of the episode done.
Yeah, I think we've put it off long enough. I'm just gonna say it. Robot Wars is no more, at least on the BBC.
So the official terminology, I believe, is not renewed. Let's call a spade a spade. It's been cancelled.
Yeah.
To, and I quote, make room for other programming.
Yeah. Do you know what that other programming is?
Is this tennis thing true or not?
I don't. That's the only thing I've read. I
didn't look into it enough.
If Robot Wars has been cancelled for tennis, it's just... I mean, it's gutting anyway, but for tennis, come on.
I mean, I've said quite a lot on Twitter and Reddit already, but I know that people that listen to this don't necessarily read those things, so apologies for repeating myself here. But I'm not that annoyed about it getting cancelled. That is the BBC's decision. If they're not getting out of it what they want to get out of it, then they've got to do it. It's fine. The fact that they didn't make their own announcement and they left it up to teams to kind of disseminate that information to fans is every level of not okay. It is... They are going in the Hall of Cowardice alongside Crackers and Smash. That's where the BBC now belong.
So just to provide a slightly different perspective on this, I mean, how many other programs do you know? Do the BBC normally announce that they're not renewing something at all?
I don't know, because I don't care about TV enough most of the time to see whether that happens or not. And if this is standard procedure, that's even worse.
I just think for most, I think we're in a minority in terms of people who care about Robot Wars, right? I think most of the people that care about it, maybe they probably don't follow all the teams on Twitter and make podcasts about it and follow the Robot Wars Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So what are they going to... As far as they're concerned, it just that was it. It just doesn't come on again, and that's fine, you know. And then
presumably, yeah. I mean, bear in mind that I know people, for example, who like Robot Wars. They are people who will watch every episode when it comes on TV. They're not necessarily going to chase down teams on social media, listen to podcasts, whatever, but they are people who really enjoy Robot Wars. And I had to tell them that a new series was starting because the BBC just don't seem to communicate about anything unless it's their big 5 or 6 programmes. There was no advertising for it. People just sort of stumbled across it on a TV guide.
Yeah. I mean, they set Robot Wars up for failure, really, by putting it alongside Blue Planet and then not talking about it ever. It's sort of... it's no surprise that it didn't get huge viewing figures.
I would imagine their thinking is it's the kind of thing that people will watch on catch up. But for me, it's an awful thing to watch on catch up because there's the potential for spoilers. It is something that I personally think you need to see live. But I know that a lot of people also feel that way about stuff like Blue Planet, when most people, for most things, are happy to watch it on catch up. But if there's something that you know other people are going to be talking about, you feel the need to see it as it happens.
Yeah. I don't know, just to sort of try and find a positive view on this. I wanted to, at least it ended when it was good. So many programs, they keep going, they become terrible, and then they end, and it's a relief. It's like, oh, finally, finally stopped doing that. Whereas, leave them wanting more, I guess. But it's still sucky. I would have really liked to have seen one more series.
To take it back to a negative,
all
the stuff that we said as reasons we thought it was going to carry on still apply. The arena is still there, and the lease on the warehouse lasts another couple of years. Mentorn still own the programme, and can make a new series if someone wants to show it. So I really do believe that some other channel, even if it takes a while, will probably pick it up. And look how that went last time. When Series 7 was on Channel 5, it was worse than No Robot Wars. Now, I don't necessarily think that same mistake would be made again, but it is one of those things that I think belongs on the BBC, and taking it anywhere else would feel weird. If anything else, Robot Wars with ad breaks is weird.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we can all just hope that maybe Netflix or someone picks it up.
I think what's more likely to happen if it was someone like Netflix is they would make their own version of it. I don't think they would want to pick up an existing sort of property because it comes with a certain set of expectations that probably don't fit what they want to produce. If Netflix made something, they'd be making it more in the mould of BattleBots and King of Bots. They wouldn't want to make Robot Wars. Robot Wars is too quintessentially British in the way it's put together. Yeah, it's devastating, and I use that term, I mean that term, I mean that strength of word. That's not me trying to hyperbolise. I really am very upset about this. But at least it's come at a time where we do have other competitions internationally that are really good. We've got the live scene probably at the strongest it's ever been, and we've got so many resources now because of the sort of uptick in interest that's come from having Robot Wars back on TV. We've got all these resources for people that do want to build something at a small scale. So we've come out of it richer than we went in. And that's the crumb of comfort I have to cling on to.
And cling on to it you shall, I'm sure.
Yes, very hard. Anything else to say on it? Or do we just crack on with this other very good series that we've been able to enjoy?
I think we should move on to King of Bots. We've got a couple of episodes to go through, and they were good episodes.
So we've got everything from the quarterfinals through this, isn't it?
I think so.
In fact, this is everything that we did predictions for. Our predictions were not good.
No, not at all.
Our predictions were fairly disastrous. I think there was one fight we agreed on, which was Great White versus Ching Jin Lun. I think we were both wrong on it. Oh, actually, no, we both agreed on Spectre getting through to a final, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a slight confession to make on that front.
Oh, no. What is your confession?
Maybe around episode 5 or 6, it was confirmed to me in a conversation with somebody that Spectre was winning King of Bots. Now, I already thought that, so all the predictions I've made, I would have made anyway in terms of Spectre just winning everything. But there have been points in conversations where I've kind of had to bite my tongue because I didn't want to tell you that I'd been spoiled and then have you potentially read into things I said.
Yeah, I'm grateful
so yeah,
for that.
I had to be dishonest in order to not semi-spoil anybody. And I just want you to know that if this happens again in future, I will approach it with this same degree of honesty. That's my promise to you.
You're an honourable man.
I really am. I think I deserve a round of applause. Yay, I did it.
Woo!
So, episode 7, first fight, first quarterfinal, Spin Doctor versus Megabyte.
Yes. I had predicted Spin Doctor, And then when the fight started and I was watching it, I was like, I really want Spin Doctor to lose because I think it's a boring robot that's too close to was it Chiang Jin Lun? I think is the one that's very similar to it.
I don't think it's a boring robot. It's the kind of robot I really like, and I think it's better than your standard drum spinner design. I think it's got more about it. Slightly less weapon oriented, but it's got that drive as well. The flames I don't love. I'm kind of flipping between liking them or not, but I think I mostly don't because I like actually seeing the action. But I wouldn't say it's boring.
Spin Doctor's flamethrower, I think I've expressed this before, is almost too much. It's quite weird. It's quite weird for me. No, Spin Doctor is good, and I do like it, but because it's so similar to a Chinese competitor, I'm sort of thinking, well, I'd rather the Chinese competitor went through.
That is completely fair, and exactly how I felt as well.
Yeah, so despite predicting their win, I predicted their win more because I just think Megabyte is unpredictable. And but yeah, I was still sort of kind of rooting for them to lose anyway.
What Megabyte definitely is insanely powerful.
Yes.
And this is a fight that they've even managed to control.
I was amazed watching this fight at how well Megabyte did.
The thing I love was their tactic at the beginning, where they literally just lined up sideways. And that was a big game changer for them compared to the fight against Qing Jinlun the first time, where they got box rushed and struggled. Okay, they weren't running well anyway. But that simple change of tactic of, well, now if you drive at us, we can easily go one way or the other, made a huge difference here. Because once they get spun up, there's not much you're doing about them. All you can do is ram your face into their fist.
Yeah, that was a good decision there, and it definitely changed the flow of the fight. I mean, Megabyte, they controlled it from the beginning, and they got the first hit and got some pretty big hits in there before the arena broke.
Ah, yes. That little hint of Robot Wars just creeping its way in there. As breaches go, that was a pretty minor one. Although I do wonder if Megabyte would have been pinned under that bit of wall had it not come away, and whether that would have been enough for them to mobilise him. You feel like from fights we've seen previously where robots have got hung up on the wall or one of the Tomb clones got the bar stuck under the wall, I feel like that would have counted as their immobilisation.
Yeah, probably.
So it's a good job they hit it hard enough to break it, really.
Yeah. Either don't hit it or hit it so hard that they've got to stop the fight anyway.
I've just realised I've already made a reference to Crackers and Smash. Spin Doctor officially avoid the Cowardice Club by choosing to fight on.
This blew my mind. So Spin Doctor was beyond repair. Like it lost a wheel, and that was clearly not going to work. So I don't understand why they're even given the option to continue. To be honest, and then they took it, which just blew my mind. Which it's very. I guess that's what you got to do, isn't it? You've got one fight, and the robot's already destroyed, and you never know. Megabyte might blow itself up, but I mean, it was still kind of surprising to me that they were given the option. I guess. I had in my notes that Megabyte are going to get it, and then wait, there's more going on here. They're actually going to continue this fight for some reason.
I wouldn't say it was beyond repair. It still had some limited mobility. It obviously got back into its box somehow, unless someone just pushed it there. That seems... Actually, I don't know why I think that's so unlikely. But anyway, they were still moving, and as you say, with a robot like Megabyte, all it needs to do is... all it needs is a bit of bad driving that puts them into a wall, and they could completely wreck themselves. Yeah,
it was funny because it was like nothing happened after that. I mean, so the Megabyte got the big hits in the first half of this, I guess, and kind of beat Spin Doctor at that moment, and then this second half was kind of a formality because Spin Doctor couldn't get out of its box, and I think the rules on him. It seems like the rules on immobility are a bit different. I don't know if they have to sort of like move further than they do in Robot Wars to be counted as mobile, but they didn't move and they just got counted out, and it was a bit of just a weird, nothing happened in that second bit. Megabyte won because Spin Doctor got counted out, and there was no more contact after that.
As we discuss it, I'm now wondering if the Spin Doctor team simply wanted Megabyte to have to work for that win and risk damaging themselves. Not necessarily to win the fight, but just to make it harder for them going forwards.
I guess the tactic there, if you're going to win, is to hope that Megabyte do come and just do some more damage to you. But I think Megabyte correctly sort of established they didn't need to and didn't take the risk of hitting them. Like you can imagine that Megabyte might come along, do one more hit on Spin Doctor, and then that shock. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen with Megabyte after it does that. So yeah, it's just maybe it was a bit of almost a spiteful move of like, well, you've clearly won, but we're gonna make sure it's as hard for you as possible.
It's kind of like in a game of snooker. Is it a game of snooker? It's kind of like in snooker. When a player, if they're, 15 points behind and there are 6 points left on the table, which I've just realised mathematically wouldn't happen, but follow along with this. They could, in theory, if they wanted to, play that frame on and try and play safety shots to force the other person to pot and win. And it's really unlikely that they'd win, but they could. And every player will concede that frame as an act of sportsmanship to say, let's not go through this pointless formality. So in a way, they've kind of played that frame anyway. And yet I come out of it thinking, fair play to them, rather than, that's a dick move. That analogy really got away from me. But I ran with it anyway, and I'm sticking with it.
I think different sports have different expectations of sportsmanship, I suppose, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, in golf, it's really frowned upon to drive a 110-kilo robot into your opponent.
I'm sure it is.
Some would say it might even lead to a disqualification.
Possibly. I'm not an expert on golf, though, so I wouldn't know.
It's just hitting balls with sticks. Like most sports.
Most sports?
Football, balls with sticks. The sticks are your feet. I'm just going to move this on before I go off on a weird tangent. Next up, Spectre versus Grill Judge. Now, you are famously a Razor fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we've ever had the Razor versus Tornado discussion, but this felt a little bit Razor Tornado.
What, with the specific defense for this one type of weapon?
Yes, the entirely defensive additions.
Yes, so Grill Judge put polycarbonate walls around their robot that were tall enough that Spectre wouldn't be able to bite them, which were effective for a bit. Yeah, this was a. I don't really know how I feel about this. It's one of those things, like, it makes sense. I mean, people change their robot depending on who they like. If you're like, it's not considered fishy to go and add a huge like aluminium wedge on the front of your robot to absorb the blows of a big spinner. That's like, it's good tactics, great work, good forward thinking, wonderful. And then, is it weird to put big walls around your robot, make it taller so that this crushing robot can't crush you? And it's funny because it almost feels cheap, but I don't know if that's just because I really, really want to see robots get crushed, or if it's genuinely cheap,
It's your appetite for destruction that makes you think that.
Yeah, it's just like, because, the big aluminium shock absorber on the front of a robot still gets destroyed. You still get the satisfaction of seeing something get torn to shreds by a spinner. Whereas this is like, oh, you're just depriving me of the of the best part of this robot. It almost feels like a cheap move, but I don't think it's as bad as the ridiculous thing that Tornado did.
I mean, the big issue with the Tornado thing is that I think they were very knowingly operating at the very edge of the rules with that. Where, really and truly, the rules were meant to be written to stop you doing that, but they weren't written well enough to stop you doing it. Whereas now, the ethos across all competitions really seems to be, take whatever you want into the arena as long as it meets the rules of the competition. It's this idea that a bombshell, for example, can be an axe bot one fight, a lifter another, a vertical spinner another, a horizontal spinner another. That is seen as fine. Even though it's premeditated, it's seen as fine. And we see lots of robots putting all kinds of different crazy wedges on that seem to have been basically specially made for one robot. Or if you look at Ghost Raptor versus Ice Wave back in the first rebooted season of BattleBots, where Ghost Raptor have gone in with a specially made tool to fight Ice Wave. We seem to have just accepted that this is fine now. And as much as I don't like it, I think it is better than the idea of you make your robot and it's basically in parc ferme. You can repair it to its exact same condition as when you started, and that is it.
It is a different mentality, isn't it? Because it's quite pure. If you've got a robot that is one thing and doesn't have different configurations and isn't especially modified for specific fights, that's quite a pure thing of, here's a robot, this is what I've built, and this is all I can put in the arena. And then sort of having all these little extra add-ons and stuff changes it, and it makes it more complicated. It makes it a more interesting sport, I think, to watch, because there's a lot more in the world of tactics and stuff like that for what you're going to add onto your robot. And obviously some robots, I think, are more amenable to having last minute additions made to them than others. I think if you had something that's like rapid, I suspect that's quite hard to, I'm just going to suddenly put some polycarbonate walls on it. I would, especially the first version, I would suspect it's quite hard to do that last minute.
You couldn't do anything to the first version.
Yeah. Whereas, more modular robots, or robots that are, I don't know, less machined, I guess, are, you can do these things to it. So there's I think it's a more interesting, more in-depth sport as a result of it. But there are definitely, I think this, it almost feels cheap, but I think it's fine. Like, it was still a good fight because of this. And I guess it was a bit less guaranteed. There were a few moments where it's like, what can Spectre do at this point? So yeah, it's fine, I think.
I suppose the worry I have is that we could easily take this to a point where preparing for a fight is basically game theory, where you're trying to second guess what your opponent is going to do and react to it, but they're second guessing your reaction and therefore changing what they were going to do originally, and it just becomes a big mess of guessing what the other person's going to do. I'd rather you just built the best thing you could and made it fight. But I'm aware that I'm at quite a sort of purist end of the spectrum. The thing I will say is that the best robots don't do it. The only robots that have had any success, and I'm talking televised heavyweights here, there's possibly things from Feathers or whatever, the only two I can think of that have had any success with it are Tornado, who basically cheated, and Bombshell.
Well, I mean, Eruption has the specific things on the front, like they have different sort of armor configurations and stuff. And Behemoth, I know they've never particularly won much, but they do have the different scoops and stuff. So I think other robots do this too, and are successful robot.
See, I'm not counting that as this. They are, by the standard, very minor changes. They're useful, but they're minor. So Behemoth is still a scoop lifter.
Most of the time.
Or an ineffective grabber. If Eruption goes in with the rubberized panels over the Hardox panels on those sides, it's still going to try and flip the opponent out of the arena. It's fine details that are being changed. But if you look at something like Carbide, okay, they made a slight modification to fight nuts, but they just go in the same every time and they usually win. A robot like Apollo, they just built it really well and it goes in and it does well. Razor never really had to make changes. Spectre's not had to make any changes. Megabyte's not made any sweeping changes.
I mean, Spectre has the different types of teeth.
But that's literally just changing the pressure that you exert when you crush.
But so,
I would argue, by the way, that there is no point to the two-tooth setup. I think it is objectively worse than the single-tooth setup.
Yeah. Is the change that Grill Judge, is that in this category of like minor change doesn't really matter, or is it outside of it? Because I mean, fundamentally, it's still a vertical spinner that's going to do what it always does in the same way.
That's a tricky one, because I would say that it's just an armor change, but you could argue that what Tornado did was kind of an armor change as well. So I'm stuck in between two positions with it. I'm fine with it because it didn't work. Had it worked, I'd feel very differently about it.
I think part of what's painful to watch about it is that it's so damn cheap and so clearly aimed at one type of weapon. Like all the other stuff, any other armor changes, I think you could justify as, or they're effective against different types of weapon. But this kind of thing is just to stop a crusher. And I think a big part of it for me is it's so... when you've got like something that's really effective and really powerful that can be completely and utterly nullified by a really simple change, something about that bothers me. And it's just the way things go sometimes. But it's just like that you can stop. You know, when if you got like a little sibling or something that's trying to hit you and you just put your hand on their head, yep. That kind of thing. It's just such a cheap move. And
literally what Ghost Raptor did to Ice Wave in BattleBots.
Yeah, and when you're the one doing the cheap move, it's fine. Like, if I have younger siblings, and it was always funny doing that to them. But I can imagine I don't have any older siblings, so I guess if my dad did it to me, that'd be really irritating.
Or your younger sibling now, who I think you said is bigger than you.
This is true. Yes, my brother is no longer my little brother.
It's funny that you say it's an adaptation to deal with one type of weapon. It's not. It's an adaptation to deal with a specific robot. And we saw that in the final as well, and we'll get there when we get there, but we saw that from Cheongjin Lun as well, with a very specific style of wedge that would only be effective against Spectre.
Yeah.
Really, it all comes down to whether you see this as a competition between machines or a competition between teams. If it's a competition between machines, they should be going in pretty much the same every time. If it's a competition between people, then their ingenuity and their ability to produce something at short notice for a situation is part of it.
Mm.
I personally fall a little more on the machine side.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer if it was more about machines, but this was good. I think we should move on from this because we could talk about this for hours.
We'll get into the actual fight.
But it's a fine adaptation. Like you said, it doesn't really work very well. Spectre is just so... Well, Spectre loses their teeth really early on, which makes me sad. But I mean, other than that, Spectre's such a more powerful robot that it still kind of just dominated this fight.
And there are some excellent moments of driving. The work they do to get around the side and get around the back is superb.
Yeah,
There's one moment in particular, maybe 2/3 of the way through the fight, where they're kind of going nose to nose with Grill Judge, and then they suddenly just back up and turn and get around the back. Absolutely masterful stuff.
Yeah, they do very well. I mean, and Grill Judge just got so few hits on well, it didn't really get any big hits on Spectre, so it's like, yeah, Spectre drove very well, and I mean the power of their drive, they just kept shoving them into the walls, into the Nargulator, into all the stuff until Grill Judge eventually just lose drive and can't move on anymore. But I'm very impressed with how durable Grill Judge's weapon is, really. I mean, that took a lot of beating, really, and
it got slammed into the wall repeatedly with that weapon running.
Yeah, and kept going, which was amazing, really.
I mean, Grill Judge, all-round excellent robot. I think most other opponents in this round, it would have had a very good chance again. I think they had a decent chance against Spectre, really.
Yeah, this was the one that I think was probably closest for Spectre, I think, in many ways, I think.
Oh, by a mile.
Yeah.
By a mile, this was their hardest fight.
Yeah.
But they, as Craig Charles would say, go marching on.
They do indeed.
Oh no. Oh, this is a real shenanigans episode, isn't it? Because we've got to do Great White versus Chiang Jin-Lun next.
Why is this shenanigans? What's happened in this that's shenanigans?
What? Sometimes I wonder if you actually watch the episodes or if you just stare at them like in a reflection in the window or something.
I wonder if I watch them as well. Yes, right. I've read through the rest of my notes. Yes, I know what you mean now.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans with a capital anigans.
Do you know who you predicted for this fight? Did we
I predicted Great White.
We both went with Great White, okay.
I predicted the winner of the fight. I predicted the best robot in the fight. I predicted the robot that did all the damage and exerted most of the control and showed most of the aggression. I mean, much like PP3D versus Cherub, I think this decision is technically correct, but that doesn't make the rules okay.
It's technically correct but it's regarding a rule that we had no idea. Well, I didn't. I don't feel like the audience had any idea about it.
If you speak Chinese, you probably knew about it.
That's true. That's very true. Very true indeed. I mean, I think Chiang Jin-Lung had a chance to win legitimately. There was a point where I think Great White was upside down or something, and I don't think they'd have been able to flip themselves if Chiang Jin-Lung had left them at that point.
No, their self-righter worked really well, I thought. Unless this is another point in the fight that I don't remember.
I think this is quite near the end, and I don't know. I just feel like where they were. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I just feel like Great White would have not managed it. But I mean, who knows? Doesn't matter. Chiang Jin-Lung hit them again, and they were the right way up again. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, so the shenanigans were the. Well, so this went the distance, right? It went to a judge's decision at the end of it.
Yes.
I think in something like BattleBots, I think Great White would have won, obviously, because of damage through the active weapon.
Yeah. Shall I explain the whole situation here? Because I don't know how much of the rules you've been able to find out. So basically, the teams in these rounds have control of the floor flippers. It's a 3-minute fight, and they're allowed to use them from 1 minute 30 onwards. They used them with about 1 minute 43 to go, I think it was. So they used it about 13 seconds too early. Now, the robots were nowhere near each other. They activated the flipper. It kind of lifted Chiang Jin-Lun onto its side and it came down again. Absolutely no harm done. These are the rules with the flipper. If you use it before 1 minute 30, and it immobilises your opponent. The opponent is righted, and the fight continues from there. You don't get the win. If the fight goes to a judge's decision, you get a significant points penalty, which makes it practically impossible to win the fight on the judge's decision, which is what happened to them. Without that points deduction, it's a tight decision, but it's theirs. With that points deduction, they basically couldn't win. It appears, however, that if they had used it at the wrong time, the fight had carried on, and they'd knocked them out within the time limit, it would have been fine. There would have been no punishment for getting it wrong. So you've got really harsh punishment or no punishment.
That is weird.
It really is. Now, I understand this is their first time running the competition. This is a bit of an edge case. You feel like they'll fix it up for next time, but boy, have Steve and Ellis got unlucky there.
Yeah.
They have been on the wrong end of a bad rule. And at the end of the day, it seems trivial in terms of the difficulty to disable that button for the first minute and a half of the fight. Just have the thing turned off. That's all you need to do. Take that out of teams' hands. They don't need that. They don't need to be worrying about that. And the audience shouldn't be worrying about it either. That's
interesting with the way the rules are written, if they've got control of it, because you could just use it a huge amount in the beginning. And like you said, as long as you get a knockout, if you use that and then get a knockout, you're fine. I wonder if that's weird. I wonder if there's any team that'd be brave enough to sort of like use that as a tactic.
It's just so silly. We've lost a great robot because of it. One thing I will say, and I'm going to be saying this a lot over the course of this episode, Jin-Lun is a very good robot. That thing can take a beating.
Yeah.
They've gone through most of this fight without their weapon working because their weird, crappy little wedge got bent up. They've lost a wheel, I think, at one point. And they have still been able to dominate the last sort of 45 seconds of the fight.
Yeah, they did. They did do very well. All the robots in these rounds are all good. They're all good robots.
Sorry, I'm just checking the list of robots to see if I need to refute that. And yes, they are all good robots.
No refusions? I don't know.
Refutations? No disagreement necessary.
Yeah.
I will say that coming into this, if I had to rank all of the robots that were left, I would have put Jin-Lun probably bottom. Having seen it, having seen more of it, I would not put it bottom anymore. I think they were lucky to come through this fight, but they made their own luck by taking the beating that they got. But I will continue to be annoyed for quite a long time.
Yeah, it is a rubbish decision in many ways. But it does result in the biggest news, I think, of the whole series, which is that Ellis can still speak.
Yes, although he doesn't look like he really wants to. He looks very angry.
I think it's quite funny that he doesn't speak at all, and then the one time he does, it's the losing speech.
I mean, he is quite used to crashing out of competitions despite having a very good robot. At least this time he didn't do it smoking.
No. It would almost be better if he did, though.
It also sucks because you feel like it was probably him that pressed that button. Because Steve was busy driving it. You know what? It's Steve's fault, actually, because he, with Great White, wrecked Neon. Therefore, Ellis was free to press the button. It's his fault. Ellis, it's not your fault. You can stop losing sleep over it now. Dry your eyes, get back in the workshop. We all believe in you.
Most of us believe in you. Oh, no, we all do.
I know it's really unlikely, but I'm now worried that Ellis previously wasn't blaming himself. Will listen to this and will suddenly go, it's all my fault.
We'll never know.
Snake versus Thunder and Lightning, then.
Yeah.
Snake, of course, replacing Rustbore, who broke their weapon shaft and therefore weren't ready for this fight in time. They came back in because they were super unlucky to lose to Jin-Lun, I would imagine. I'm guessing that was the logic.
Yep.
It's a very good robot.
Shockingly, yes. In a round of good robots, Snake is a good robot. Some great insight there.
With a seemingly quite obvious flaw now we see it.
Sort of. I'm amazed it didn't write.
I don't know if the little bit of damage they'd taken by losing one of the forks was the reason for it not self-writing.
I mean, that just seems like really tiny margins on the robot being able to put itself up the right way again.
Those tolerances are very slim.
I mean, that's amazingly close. It's like it's all just practically vertical and just so close to being able to right itself, and then didn't manage it.
And they were completely on top of the fight until this point. The driving from Snake in this fight was incredibly impressive. The fact that they managed to get some good drives on two very small, very nippy machines was impressive, and I think they even got a couple of grabs. In fact, I think they hung one up on the side very precisely. Fantastic driving.
They put the little red robot up in a corner, and it couldn't move anymore. And I wanted to ask you, what are the rules on how many robots in a cluster bot you need to take out to win? Because I feel like red was immobilized for a long time, and the blue robot didn't do anything about that.
I don't know specifically what rule they've gone with for King of Bots, but the general standard across BattleBots and Robot Wars seems to be 55% of the total mass of the sort of competitor, as it were, so all the machines you've got in there, has to be immobilised.
Okay.
Which is why Crackers and Smash, one of them is 54% and one of them is 46%.
Yeah.
So the one that does the damage is the slightly heavier one to accommodate the weapon, but it's not so heavy that if it were knocked out, the whole machine is out. So you have to assume that Thunder and Lightning are a 50-50 split. So they've got to get both of them out.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know what else there is to say about this. That was the only thing that stood out to me. I think all good robots. I predicted Thunder and Lightning won. So, point for Sam, I suppose.
I mean, I think you did better in general on the predictions, didn't you?
I don't know.
I really messed it up. Not the word I was reaching for, I'll be honest. It's interesting, though, because this is one where, when we spoke about it last time, I did kind of doubt my own prediction. I started really backing Thunder and Lightning. And I think all the reasons I gave why I was starting to back them turned out to be completely irrelevant to what actually happened. Which is basically, Snake was quite unlucky. Again.
Yeah. If that had gone to the judges, who do you think would have taken it?
It would have to be Snake, really. They've taken a small amount of damage, but you could argue that immobilising 50% of the opponent should also be damage points. Their control was significantly better. I think aggression is just about even, but Thunder and Lightning have shown the same amount of aggression with double the machines. So really, I'd call that Snake's aggression. It's a tricky one, but it feels wrong to say anything other than Snake is on top of that fight.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's really close, though. That would have been a really interesting judges' decision, I think. I'm kind of glad it didn't go there, because I think if it had gone to the judges, I think there was so much room for everybody being unhappy with however that went, really.
And it also raises a really good question about how you judge multibots. Are they likely to go out and score double the points of a single robot just because there's two of them? Or do you assign half weight to each of them?
I don't know. I think you just sort of just account for the whole, but treat it as a team thing, right? So if you've got, I would think if you had, I don't know. That's a good question. Like, if you had one robot being really aggressive versus two robots being really aggressive, which would be better? I suppose it'd be both of them being really aggressive, wouldn't it?
If anyone out there has done any judging, let us know.
Yeah, hard one to judge, I think, but it didn't go there. Thunder and Lightning won.
And there ends the competitive fights for this episode.
Yeah.
So now we get some exhibitions, and I am very happy with these. I don't know about you.
They were good. I was wondering how they were going to fill the time, and they filled in a good way, I think. 2v2s
are so much better than tag team rubbish.
Yes. Oh God, yes. I was worried for a moment. It's like, oh man, not tag teams, but no, yeah, 2v2, really good.
It's just, I mean, we said about this in the international specials, which, by the way, we should have mentioned as a potential nail in the Robot Wars coffin because they were atrocious. It just seems like a really arbitrary restriction to put on robots when you put them in the arena. Just let them fight.
Yeah. And
we get really good fights out of it.
Yeah. So the first fight here was Saber and Snake versus Tansha and Vulcan. And it made me laugh that Vulcan was teamed up with John.
I was going to say, it would have been so much better if they'd let John drive Vulcan, let Alan drive Saber, because it's basically Apollo, and the others can fight it out for the other machines. We've seen a lot of stuff in this that we kind of wanted to see but didn't in the competitive fights. So we've seen Vulcan actually hit something, and we've also seen Snake manage to do a lift and hold manoeuvre, which we weren't sure whether it could or not when they took Tansha for quite a lengthy ride.
Yeah.
Something else I also didn't notice is that Saber is four-wheel drived.
Four-wheel drived?
4-wheel drive. 4-wheel driven. 4-wheel drove.
4-wheel
God,
drove.
you're so picky.
I could be more picky.
You could.
I choose not to be.
4-wheel drive seems like a really weird choice for a flipper.
Why?
Well, because you want to be absolutely certain that the lip of your flipper is going to be on the floor. So by having 3 points of contact, i.e. 2 wheels and the front, you guarantee that. Whereas with 4-wheel drive, you're suddenly having to work again with quite fine tolerances, especially on what look like pneumatic tyres.
I mean, it's just a sign that you need to be a good engineer to do it. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
You're doing so well, so well.
That is interesting, I suppose. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that, but I mean, they do well still. I mean, they still seem to be able to get under other robots reasonably effectively.
Yeah, I mean, the flipper needs work.
I mean, Rapid is 4-wheel drive and could do fairly well.
That is a good point, actually. I hadn't considered that. Very different style of 4-wheel drive, I think, because it's much smaller wheels. It also struck me as weird that they were such large wheels.
Yeah.
Not that that really makes a huge amount of difference.
No, well, I wouldn't have thought so. Not significant.
But yeah, Sabre in general, decent flipper. Lots of things they can very easily improve on it for a next build.
Yes.
I'm going to have to ask again, do you watch the talking between fights?
I watch it. I don't take notes on it, so you'll have to jog my memory for anything that was said.
So the kid from the Snake team, whose name I believe is Alan, his conversation via translation with... I know, I know, yeah. This is an unrecorded conversation we've had before.
God damn it.
Sadly, his name is not related to weather in any way.
Cut that. I feel like I can't laugh at that kid's name.
We've had this unrecorded conversation before about when I've taught children from certain parts of the world who like to take on anglicised names, because obviously names from some languages are really difficult to pronounce, and for some reason they always seem to choose names from the 50s. I've had Marthas and Ethels and Franks and all kinds of dated names that apparently are the fashion if you're taking on an anglicised name. Alan seems to just be another of those.
I'm sorry. I might cut a lot of that laughter.
I'll let you decide whether that goes in or not. But anyway, the lad from Snake, whose name I believe is Alan, is talking kind of to John Reed via translation just to say that he's a big fan of Beta.
Oh, yeah, I caught that, yeah.
Now, that in itself is a lovely moment, but the other thing I noticed is that people in the crowd seemed to recognise that name and understand what it was, which infers or implies, one or the other,
Implies.
that there is a reasonable understanding and knowledge of the wider world of robot combat, which I take as an extremely encouraging sign that that audience is not just there for this new thing, but they've actually looked into it and enjoyed it elsewhere. And again, as people that need to look abroad for our robot combat now, that is very good news.
Yes.
Next up, we have Spin Doctor and Great White versus Rustboar and Wild Beast. Basically, all of the vertical spinners.
All of the this is subtitle for this fight is Mayhem and a Drone. I have no notes.
2 drones.
On this. Well, 2 drones. I have no notes on this fight. I couldn't follow it. It was just ridiculous. It was really fun to watch. I really enjoyed it, but I don't know what happened.
This was a really good fight between spinners that could all take a hit or two, with the possible exception of Rustboar, which did quite quickly end up in smoke.
Yes. Is that what stopped it, by the way? Because I feel like the end of this was a bit weird to me. Because it was like, yeah, Rustboar smoked a lot, filled up the entire box with smoke, and then I think it was a whistle that stopped the fight. And then apparently Great White and Spin Doctor won.
I'm guessing from the fact it was a whistle and nothing else that they did stop it because of the smoke.
Yeah.
And I love that whole thing because obviously that smoke has slowly got worse.
Yeah.
And someone has had to decide when enough is enough. And when someone has to decide when enough is enough and stop a sporting competition, they almost always leave it a little bit longer than they should have. It has to get to the point where no one can see anything anymore for someone to stop it.
Yep.
And you have to feel that at least one team probably couldn't see their own robot by that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly the audience couldn't see anything anymore. It was a fun fight, though.
It really was. For a very short fight as well, it had a lot of action in it.
Yeah.
I also quite liked the sequence of them basically clearing the box out. I thought that was quite a nice little behind-the-scenes touch of, oh look, this was actually a massive pain in the butt.
Yeah, King of Box has a lot of like random behind the scenes stuff that occasionally sneaks in and stuff. Like when they were doing the you sort of saw shots of how they were drawing competitors against each other and stuff, which didn't need to be in there for any reason, but they just have it there, which is like, yeah, it's really cool. It's a really it's a really interesting difference, a really obvious difference, I think, between the sort of more Western versions of this and King of Bots, of seeing those random bits of behind the scenes and stuff. It's cool.
I think it very nicely straddles the line between BattleBots and Robot Wars in that they have a bit of interview stuff, I think a bit too much interview stuff for my taste, but I'm not a Chinese audience. But they do also have the more fun behind the scenes stuff that BattleBots tends to gloss over.
Yeah.
We shall move on to episode 8. The Tale of the Robot That Would Not Die.
Which robot is that?
Cheung Jin Lun.
Okay.
At no point in this whole series did they actually stop working.
This is probably true of most robots that have won all their fights until this point.
Yes. But by the end, it was only true of 2 robots, and one of them had won.
Well, I don't think it's significant to point out that Cheung Jin Lun hasn't broken yet.
And it won't break at any point. That's my point. I'm skipping ahead in time a bit. It's non-linear.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Right. Yeah. In the whole competition, only 2 didn't break. Okay.
Yes.
You make weird links, my friend.
I do lots of weird things. It's fine.
So we have Cheung Jin Lun versus Megabyte.
No, we don't. We have 9 minutes of fluff first, because this is a grand final, and grand finals have to have fluff.
I think I'm going to be honest. So, like, I think I did. This is when I did start skipping stuff. So
You missed nothing.
Good. So Cheung Jin Lun versus Megabyte.
The rematching.
This is outside of my original predictions. So I made a new prediction just for you. I thought you might appreciate this. I predicted Megabyte at this point.
Oh, we should have done that. Oh well.
I did it. Well, I tried to anyway.
I mean, he didn't put it in writing somewhere. You see, what I need right now is a sort of Darren Brown thing where you tell me to look on the windowsill and there'll be a sealed envelope with your predictions. Or possibly a phone call model of a robot.
Do you not believe that was? Do you not believe that was my actual prediction?
I completely believe you.
I mean, given that I predicted the robot that lost.
See, I thought maybe you might be pretending you made a wrong prediction here so that you can then go on to say that you made lots of new correct predictions.
No.
Well, thinking about it, you wouldn't have had to because you predicted the semi-final on the other side correctly. So,
yeah.
Anyway, Megabyte versus Cheung Jin Lun.
So this is the first interesting thing about these interview things that they do, because I did watch some of them, and there is an issue with tense here. So these interviews are conducted after the fights, it seems, and the guy used the wrong tense. He spoke about it in the past tense and kind of gave away the fight, which is not the first time this happened. Not the last time this happened, sorry.
I'm not sure it gave away the fight in terms of what was said. It was more the tone of it that gave it away.
I think it was the tone and the tense that he used. I mean, if that tone in the future tense, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. But it's the fact that it was past tense.
When we get spun up, I will know that we have won.
Yeah.
Or I will think that we have won. That wouldn't make sense. If he said, when we got spun up, I knew we'd won, and then they went on to win, that would be fine.
No, it's because it's when we got spun up. That's the bit that sort of like gives away that this is all like filmed after the fact, right? You know, the same thing is like, you know, once we're spun up, I feel like we're going to win. I don't know, it's a subtle thing. I think it's a combination of the tense and the tone, but it does give it away, and it's annoying, but it's there.
I must admit, I personally think that with what was said, there is still potential for it to go either way. The thing that gives away the fact they're going to go on to lose is that it wouldn't be an interesting editorial decision to put that clip in were they not about to lose. I think that's more what gives it away. It's our knowledge of TV.
I think in this case, I've got a little question mark against it, but there is a for Spectre versus Thunder and Lightning is the other one where I really noticed it,
yes.
and there's no question mark in my note there. It was definitely, you know, it was like, well, I know exactly what's going to happen, and yeah.
What we've got here is people speaking English being edited by people that aren't native English speakers. And there have been a lot of times where that's clear just by the point in a sentence that they cut things, where they'll be on a strange inflection where there's clearly more sentence coming and they'll just cut.
I think I'm right in saying that the way that tenses work in Chinese is very different.
Quite possibly, yeah. It's a structurally very different language in general.
Yeah, so maybe why this wasn't caught at the time the interview was conducted. Because I think if you were doing these interviews, you'd, like, a native English speaker might catch that he used that tense and go, no, you need to re-record that in a way that's not so obvious this is done after the fight. But I don't know. It doesn't, it's annoying, but it's fine. It is what it is. I'm not going to have a go at them for it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a lot of their audience aren't going to be native English speakers either.
No.
It's only the fact that we're choosing to seek this out from another country that we have that mild spoiler.
Yeah.
But when they did get spin up, I also thought they'd won. I thought they'd won before they got spun up. I thought this was basically a no contest.
Yeah, I was absolutely stunning that Cheung Jin-Lun survived that hit.
Well, it's not that hit, it's those hits.
Those hits, yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, yeah, very good. Very good robot.
The aggression as well is really impressive from them. The fact that they lose the fronts, they're sort of, right, we'll happily run at them with the back then. There's no hesitation there, it's just, okay, we'll just go hit them again and see what happens. Their sort of tactics/attitude towards the fight are absolutely bang on.
I wonder how much of this is because they haven't paid for the robot.
Yes, I think that was kind of a thing as well with the Spin Doctor Megabyte fight. Of course they're happy to send it in for another hit because they've got a budget to get spares. That means they can repair it and go out and do a 2v2 and also get smashed up again.
Yeah.
In Robot Wars, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah. This budget for a robot makes such a big difference, I think, to the quality of the competition in so many ways.
I joke about Spin Doctor not going in the Cowards Club with Crackers and Smash, but if Crackers and Smash had carried on that fight against Carbide, they would probably have taken expensive damage. As much as I like to comedy mock them, I would possibly make the same decision. Although, again, there is still the angle of if you're not willing to get it broken, don't put it in there, but that's easy to say. If you're given a chance to not get smashed up, you're probably going to take it.
Yeah, there's, happy with it being broken and then happy with it being broken beyond repair.
Especially needlessly.
Yeah.
Sometimes discretion is the better part of valour. But not in this case.
No.
In this case, recklessness was the better part of victory. The thing that Cheung Jin-Lun has really showed, through a couple of its fights, really, not just this one, is that reliability is a huge, huge factor. You can pack all the kinetic energy you want into a big weapon, but if you don't keep running, you will lose. Megabyte is one of the best spinners out there in terms of dealing with its own energy. But everything has a breaking point, and they managed to survive long enough for Megabyte to reach that breaking point. So as much as I can say that Cheung Jin-Lun have had a lucky run to this point, once again, they're making that luck by going out there and surviving.
Yeah, as ever, it's no mean feat surviving that long against a really big spinner. So it's a very, very tough robot. How does it end? It ends because they both kind of stopped moving. I don't know what you think about the way this ended, right? Because Megabyte got counted out, and I think this is just me being really picky about rules and mobility and stuff. Because there's no doubt that Cheung Jin-Lun could still move in my mind. Like, it was still still could have moved, but they didn't move in that time. I don't think because they were all cheering, so their robot was also stationary.
If that referee had said the word "one," they would have moved.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason that I really like the idea of having referees there. Again, I wouldn't dress them in black and white striped uniforms because I have a weird problem with that. But that sort of element of two-way communication makes that an absolute non-issue for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough.
So yeah, anything else on that one?
No.
In which case, we get to move on to Thunder and Lightning versus Spectre.
Yes.
Tell us more about the subtleties of language, Sam.
I mean, so the Spectre guy was like, I don't know, I forget the exact wording, but he talked about how he knew which driver was controlling which robot. And again, the tensor used...
Was it we knew or was it we thought we knew? Something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. This was so much that the language so gave it away. I think the point you made earlier is really good, actually, about the fact that it's in here at all is kind of a spoiler because obviously we know how television works, which I think is a factor here as well. But yeah, that was weird, and it was interesting and quite. It's one of those tactics that's like interesting and valid, but I think quite awkward to express. You know, we're going to go after the robot that we know is driven by the grown-up because that's the robot that's the bigger threat, which is completely valid, but weird to say. And I think they found it weird to say.
I was surprised when they said it. I was even more surprised when later they said we could see that the other one was being driven well, essentially. Yeah, that's obviously the adult.
Yeah.
Completely fair to say. Just something you might choose not to say, and something that I think we've kind of skirted around a little bit. Maybe they thought it would be okay because most people wouldn't be able to understand what they were saying.
No, it's fine. I think we have talked about it before, and yeah, I don't know. It's it is what it is. I mean, that's a fact. You know, one of those robots is driven better than the other.
I think there's certain little language tricks that we both like to use. So, for example, I will always talk about people being experienced or inexperienced rather than good or bad and things like that, which is a subtle difference, but I'd like to think that is that's the morally upright approach to having that conversation for me. But that's because I'm doing it in a way like this where I have control over the way I come across. Whereas they have been sat down in front of a camera and told to talk. So it's a very different situation for them. I'm worried this comes across as a criticism of them now. It's absolutely not.
I am going to criticise them, though, quickly. Not them personally. I'm going to criticise their robot.
What?
Those teeth, I know why they come off, but it bothers me that they do come off, and they come off really damn easily. And as fun as it is to watch Spectre be a fantastic control bot, I want to see it crush things.
Have you seen the new version of Spectre?
I have not. I'm aware there is a new version. I've not seen it.
They have very slightly addressed this by having a new head, which has the mounting for the teeth, and then a sort of sub-tooth behind them. So it's smaller, it's less prominent, but it does mean that if/when they lose the teeth, they will still have something. So they've kind of addressed it.
Is it like a tooth that will actually like penetrate another robot, or is it just a bit of extra grip?
Superficially.
But I don't want superficial stuff. I want battery piercement, man.
I am surprised that they didn't just machine up a couple of extra heads and risk the damage. But I suppose the shock that would go through that head would also be transferred through to the whole hydraulic system. So I don't know if that's more the consideration rather than just the structural integrity of the head and that getting twisted.
Yeah, no, I completely understand why it's that way, but it is just disappointing to me, you know. I guess it's fairly well known what I want to see from this robot, and it is disappointing. Disappointing that I consistently don't get to see it.
From a competitive point of view, it's the right thing to do. From a spectacle point of view, it's less right. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but it's less right. They can win perfectly well without those teeth. I
think this is the closest we have to me being as inconsistent as you, right? Because I'm normally on the side of, you know, I'll only, you know, build robots that are competitive and can win, and all other considerations aside, I feel like maybe. But like this one is like, I just wish you'd just like put the competitiveness aside a little bit so I could see more of the really cool spectacle. You're asking a robot to be built in such a way that it can perform its intended function reliably. I'm not sure that's as inconsistent as you're making out. No, that's, yeah, there we go.
As much as I'd love to lambast you,
no, that's
I
great.
have to give you credit.
You've reconciled this for me. This is wonderful. This is a good day. I am consistent as always. Wonderful.
You can now sleep easy as well. I was going to say you and Ellis can sleep easy. That might come across a little differently to intended.
It's a discussion for off the air.
Can we get back to saying great things about Spectre then?
I suppose.
I don't know if it was this fight or the last one that I noticed, but their wedge is really cool. In that the very front lip of it seems to be almost floating very slightly. It can kind of just drop down a little bit. It's a little bit flexible, just to ride along the floor, and I loved that. The slam into the spike that removed the wheel was incredible. One of my favourite things I've seen them do. And the airtime they got when they slightly misjudged a drive and went into the Nargalator was fantastic.
I think my favourite thing I've seen Spectre do was use the weapon of one robot against the other one.
Yes! I saw that, I loved it, and I never made a note of it.
That's so wonderful. So we're going to grab this robot from behind. They've got a spinner. We now have a spinner.
That's exactly the sort of thing that I thought you would put down to fluke as well.
I don't care if it was a fluke or not. It was brilliant.
Yes, I'm so upset at myself for forgetting that. Just everything about Spectre is brilliant. It
Yes.
is the nearest thing to a perfect fighting robot we have right now.
I see. I always resist you. I always feel like I should push back against you saying it's a perfect robot, and I know that you're going to ask me for.
I said nearest thing.
I know that you're going to ask me that it's like for a specific example of what about it makes it not perfect. But like, while I don't know, I don't know. I know what you mean, but it's not perfect.
I would put it up there with, I mean, specifically Tombstone, in terms of something that just goes out and reliably does its job. It goes out, it almost never breaks down. New Carbide, you could kind of say that for as well, but Tombstone has been tested a lot more. Not that Spectre's been hugely tested, but we'll let that go because it's a new tournament. Those two, for me, are the nearest to perfection we currently have. Again, I'm sure there are some middleweights or beetleweights out there that are also achieving similar things. Please show me them, because I want to see more lightweights, more lighter weights.
Good fight.
Spectre.
Good fight. I'm sad there was no crushing, but there you go.
I was worried at the end of this fight, because in their interview, it sounded as though the team were getting a little bit complacent about that grand final. It sounded like they saw Chiang-Jin Lun beating Megabyte as them winning the trophy. If they'd been coming up against Megabyte in the next fight, I don't think they'd have sounded anywhere near as confident. Because I see Megabyte as one of the only robots in this competition that could trouble them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that would go. I mean, Megabyte is a powerful robot, but I mean, its unpredictability. Just I don't know. Very rare. I think that I would ever sort of call that as a winner of a fight in any way. I still think Spectre would win. I think that you're right. Megabyte would potentially prove a challenge. I think Spectre would probably take damage in doing it, but I still think they'd win.
I would back Spectre to win it, but I wouldn't put my house on it. Spectre versus Chiang-Jin Lun was 99-1 in Spectre's favour, whereas Spectre versus Megabyte, I'd have more at sort of a 65-35.
Yeah.
The only reason that Chiang-Jin Lun would realistically have beaten Spectre is if Spectre just stopped.
Yeah, which would have been a sad moment. It didn't happen. I feel like we're jumping ahead a little bit. Do you want to...
A little.
Shall we pull back a little bit and talk about the third place playoff quickly?
Yes. It's a sad fight.
Thunder and Lightning versus Megabyte. And Thunder and Lightning had done one of these fight-specific modifications. They had a huge ramp on the front of one of their robots.
Yes. Which is something that we'd kind of mentioned as a potential approach for them, in terms of give the kid a wedge and give the dad the spinner. And they went in with the kid having a wedge and the dad having a spinner, and I came away thinking, yeah, the dad should have had the wedge and the kid should have had the spinner.
I think it so much depends on the fight, doesn't it? Because I think the wedge was a really good idea against Megabyte.
The only way they were beating Megabyte was by making them throw themselves into a wall, and the wedge was the one that was going to do that. In a straight battle of inertia, neither of those Thunder and Lightning bots are winning.
No, they didn't do very well. I mean, the wedge showed that it would work. I mean, the kid did get it under Megabyte once, I think. So like,
really good initial drive from him, actually.
Yeah, I think it would. Did well. But Megabyte took out the red robot, and then it was the writing was on the wall. And then the silver one caught fire.
If you're gonna go out in a ball of flames.
Yeah. Yes, as ever, one of the most spectacular ways to leave, really.
It's a really sad ending for Thunder and Lightning, but they've still done a hell of a job. To get to 4th place with multi-bots is very impressive. Yes, they had a bit of a kind run at times, but they were very, very good machines. And I really hope that they stick with that philosophy of having 2 kind of equal robots, because the kid is going to get experience very quickly. And once you've got 2 really solid drivers, if they can maintain the sort of solid build and the damage output of the machines, they're going to be really dangerous, and there's going to be a lot of teams that don't want to face them.
Yeah.
There'll also be a few that would love to face them, the Megabytes of this world, who will just eat anything that's smaller than them, but that's always going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Sad fight, but the rightful winner, I think.
What did you think of the change of shell for Megabyte?
I didn't notice that they changed their shell.
Okay. Well, it may have escaped your attention, but they changed their shell.
Did
They went from the smaller titanium shell to the big steel one that used to be, I think, from Super Megabyte, their super heavyweight, which I just cut a few holes in to make weight. It looked quite cool.
Well,
As the aesthetics man, I assumed you would have noticed.
no, I think I was probably more taken with the huge change in one of the Thunder and Lightning robots.
That's fair, and that was also highlighted far more. Really nice bits of behind-the-scenes camaraderie shown there as well, which I continue to appreciate them showcasing.
Yeah. Up next, Ryan, we have a choice. Do you want to go in broadcast order and do the huge melee thing, or do you want to do the final?
Broadcast order, because the final should be the final thing, hence the name.
Okay. So we had a huge melee.
I have no idea how to do punditry on this Rumble.
I gave up writing
I
notes.
have 6 notes. Now, there's 2 ways I could do this. I could either talk about my notes, or I could read them word for word, which may well be more entertaining.
Go on, you read your notes.
Okay. Note number 1. Zooge! Because Zooge was there, and I really like it.
Zooge was there. I have thoughts on Zooge.
I thought you might. Tell me your thoughts on Zooge.
So the first time we saw Zooge, it was blue,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was made of wood.
Uh-uh.
But maybe I'm wrong. But this time it was bright pink and made of foam, and I can't tell you how much more I like it now that I know that it's bright pink and made of foam, which
You
is
just
ridiculous.
like pink things.
I shouldn't like this robot anymore, but like a bright pink foam robot just cracks me up so much.
But a massive blue one that's also made of polystyrene doesn't.
I don't think I realised it was made of foam.
Yeah, because otherwise it'd be stupidly top heavy. I mean, it was stupidly top heavy anyway, but imagine how much worse it would have been if that was wooden.
So as ever, this is not a competitive robot, but in a huge like melee of however many robots it was, this was really funny. And yeah, a bright pink dinosaur just cracked me up.
I mean, to an extent, they have ruined the fight by just sending shrapnel everywhere and making it hard for so many good robots to drive, but
Yeah,
it was so worth it.
A bunch of robots did get beached on that, unfortunately. This is one of the things where I think if this fight mattered for the competition, I'd be far more annoyed about it. But because it's just like, it's just a bit of fun to fill some time. It's like, well, there you go. This
melee is the perfect environment for Zooge.
Yeah.
It's
And
exactly
also,
where it should be.
What was the other one that I don't like that was in this? It was the huge spinner thing, the name of which escapes me.
That brings me to my next point, which is Crossfire versus Blue's Hammer.
Yes.
That is a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
You seem underwhelmed by it.
Well, I still don't like Crossfire.
We said we wanted to see Crossfire hit something, and we got it. And as a bonus, we got some amazing wobble. Everyone loves a bit of wobble, especially on a hammer. We love the flex in Chomp's hammer.
Yeah.
And we have to love the wobble in Blue's hammer.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good to finally sort of see Crossfire hit something to some effect.
You have a heart of stone.
Well, I still just think it's rubbish.
It's not competitive. It's not as powerful as we hoped, I don't think, as well. I'm not sure it's packing the energy that you look at it and assume it is.
No, I think that's right. I mean, as with Zooge, like in a less serious, huge fight, it makes more sense. But yeah, I think it's not what we wanted it to be. It's certainly not what I wanted it to be anyway. I don't know about everyone else.
Much like the return of Dietor and the Bash, the issue is with our expectations, not with the machine.
Yeah.
That's my summary on that one. My next note. This is a boring note, but I'll go with it. Muse being used for Griffin/Inkthorn's entrances. Open brackets, supermassive black hole, close brackets. I've been waiting all series for a Muse song to get used. Because they've been using everything else, and Muse is the perfect fit, and they finally did it with one of the worst Muse songs.
I'm sorry.
It's better than nothing, you know? Next up, weird overhead flail spinner doing actual damage.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That thing was actually good.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that do anything remotely useful.
When they're not getting their tinfoil armour bent up, they've got some serious power in the weapon, and I think they were genuinely unlucky to go out as early as they did. For something that looked absolutely useless, I was very impressed with it.
Yeah.
Also, a nice bit of fire on Blue from a couple of the hits. I don't know if it was from the hits or just coincidental, but I'm going to give them credit for it.
Fair enough.
Next note, Griffin actually being drivable.
I mean, I didn't look at Griffin very much. Was it drivable?
It wasn't upright for long, but it did manage to drive forwards in a straight line, which was a big, big improvement from its first fight.
Oh, that's not a good picture for that robot, that we're impressed that it drove forwards in a straight line.
No, but it looks like the team are out there again for 1.5. So hopefully they've either taken the same thing and it now works, or they've taken something equally mad but more effective.
We shall see.
How do you feel about... I know we've spoken about Bucky and we've spoken about Griffin individually. How do you feel about a team kind of sticking with that style of build? Would you like to see them move on to something a bit more sensible? Or are you happy with them continuing to do stuff that's a bit weird?
I mean, teams can make what they want. I can fully understand why you'd sort of like have a strong idea in your head of a slightly ridiculous robot, and then you've just got to keep trying until you get it right. So I think if I got really into robot building and doing heavyweights and stuff, I mean, I've got an idea in my head of what I'd want to build. I don't think I'd get it right on my first try, and I would.
Neither do I.
And yeah, I definitely wouldn't. And I would just probably keep trying and trying and trying different variations on that theme until I got one that worked. I think I would be much the same. I wouldn't be able to do something more sensible.
And how about building a bespoke mascot for each one?
I mean, that's just not my style, but I mean, if they want to do it, then fine.
I'm just imagining a point 10 years down the line where you start routinely turning up to ant weight competitions in fancy dress or something. Your whole personality will just completely change as a result of robots.
Would I go in this fancy dress? I don't know.
Have you done fancy dress? Are you a fancy dressist?
So I really love seeing people do cosplay and stuff. Like I really love the costumes that people make, and seeing the fun that they have doing it and dressing up as these things. I really love that whole thing, but I've never done it myself.
I just can't imagine you doing it.
I mean, so for Halloween, I used to dress up, but I'd always like dress up as like something intentionally scary. I was never one for use this as an excuse to dress up and have fun. It was always like I'm going to try and creep people out because I find that funny.
So you didn't dress up at all?
I'd like dress up. What I never got to do, but I really wanted to do. So I had a really creepy mask, right? So I'd wear this like creepy mask that covers the top half of my face, and a balaclava under it, and then a big cloak with a hood over it and stuff. And if you wear that and just stand under a street lamp somewhere on Halloween, people will get creeped. They just stand there completely still, and people will find that really creepy, which is quite funny. But what I really wanted to do was get like a really long cloak and have those like spring-loaded stilts. And just walk around on there because it would just look a bit weird because you're just a slightly more bouncy walk, or if you were good on them and you could do this without standing on your own cloak and stuff, but like running in them, because like if you're really good you can run stupidly fast in them and stuff, and that would creep people out as well, which would be really funny.
I think the Mobius team were looking for a new team member who was happy to dress up weirdly and knows a bit about robots. You should have applied. They could have made these dreams come true for you with their high-grade sponsorships.
Yeah, but like I would have to dress up as something fun,
They just do weird. They do creepy.
Yeah, this is true.
Plus, you can play an instrument, and they like to do music as well, so I'm sure whatever brass instrument you play would totally fit into their aesthetic.
Yeah, I'll come out doing some really, really creepy costume, playing a fanfare on a trumpet or something.
I think that would only add to the creepiness factor. Oh, well, talking of shiny things, my final note here is nondescript silver box, reading from the Michael Oates playbook. I still don't know what robot that was that won.
What, the wedge thing? Yeah, I have no idea. I was hoping you could tell me.
No, I've got no idea. I recognise the team. I could probably go back and find out, but I've got no idea what it is. It might be the thing that had the weird pincers, but with the pincers taken off, maybe?
I have no idea. I mean, it won because everything else got beached.
I'm not even sure it really won. I think the arena failed and put two robots up in the air, and they just went, hey, no one cares who won this, give it to them.
Yeah.
And so ends my high-level punditry of the Rumble.
Yeah, we can't cover that. It was really fun though. Like I really enjoyed watching
really
that.
Was.
It was very funny. So yeah, it was good. And this is how you should fill time. If you've got not enough like serious fights, just put less serious fights in. And
you've got to run them for the audience, so you might as well televise them. There were fights like that they filmed and didn't televise, so we could have even had more of them instead of the large amount of fluff in this episode. Now, by the way, would be a good time for one of your trumpet fanfares if you want to go and get it. Yep, that's how fanfares work.
Perfect. No, I'm not going to go get my trumpet for the purposes of this.
Lack of commitment.
You have to make do with a mouth trumpet.
I mean, I don't know how else you play trumpet, but traditionally, we have the grand final.
Yes.
Is this a worthy grand final for the series we've had?
I got to see Spectre finally bite through a robot and find a battery, and then everything blow up. Well, not blow up, but like caught fire. So yes, I'm happy with this final, but I can see that people might be less happy with this.
I sat there watching this live, and my first thought when that happened was, Sam is going to be happy. And that made me happy.
It was just good. And Spectre, they kept going. Like, you knew what they were going for, and they was like, nope, missed it, try again. It was so good.
The way they did that was masterful. Just bring it over in front of their own window so they can really see what they're doing and just nibble until they hit what they wanted. And the fact that they celebrated hitting the battery as though they'd already won was brilliant.
Yeah, well, they pretty much had one. I mean,
Had they?
Kept going for, like, how?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
At the end of the fight, they haven't stopped working. They have got beached on something.
Just ludicrous how... I mean, I guess they had another battery somewhere. I don't know. Or maybe I just don't understand how battery chemistry works. But, I mean, that was ridiculous.
It might be that was purely from the weapon system. It might be they had batteries in parallel because they did look sluggish after that went. But either way, that thing is ridiculously robust. You know, I questioned, as I was watching the episode, whether this was the final we deserved, because it's unlikely to be a contest. There weren't going to be any big hits. But the fact that a Chinese competitor has made it to the final is really important for the future of the show. I think it would have ended on a slightly sour note if it was UK versus US. It would have been fine, it would have been great to watch, but it would have just been a little hint of black mark against the series for me. So I'm really glad that we didn't have to be this specific final, but a final like this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to note about Spectre, really, is as we've sort of seen, is that Spectre is just in a different league in so many ways to everything else. To every other competitor, it's just like Spectre is just something else. And it's like, just in terms of, you know, the power behind its weapon, the power behind its drive, just everything about that robot is so... It almost just seems beyond what anyone else can do, because basically every other competitor are like people with like normal tools doing things, and then this is built by a professional robot building company with access to super high tech stuff, and they can, you know, custom machine everything in that robot. So it's kind of like, I think you've mentioned this before, of like, what does it become like if it's all just like really expensive robots that are like this, and it's kind of a bit becomes a bit exclusive, which is maybe a bit of a shame. So, I mean, of all the robots to lose to, I think, you know, this is going to be it, really. I mean, to build a robot that is on this level and can beat Spectre would just take, I think, you know, these guys would have to build another robot, I think. I don't know how many other teams could do it. So, I don't know, it's just, I think that's really worth bearing in mind with this final of, you know, Spectre made this final look easy, but Cheung Jin Lun is a fantastic robot. All the robots are fantastic. But Spectre is just that step above in every way almost. It's amazing.
I think Spectre is what happens when you get a group of engineers that love making robots and spend years not letting them build their own robots. They've been making house robots and fighting them for so long, they have just been waiting for the chance to build something of their own and show it off. And as we've sort of seen from the behind-the-scenes videos, they put a hell of a lot of work in. Other teams probably did as well, but you can really tell that for them, this was a case of, we have got one shot here. You know, Gabe and John for Tansha, fantastic, they've done a great job, but at the end of the day, they go back to their own robots. They have other things that they love and they put that care and effort into. For these guys, it is Spectre and Spectre alone, and they have got the reward they deserved. Although it's a terrible trophy, they still got the reward they deserved.
It was a good. It was a good fun. It was such a spectacular final that the commentators switched to English, which made me laugh.
I love that. I love that. There's that one bit of commentary that says it all, where they're just shouting, "Still running!"
Yeah, it's just and quite rightfully amazed that that's still running. It's just ridiculous.
The funny thing is, Change in Lund did give themselves a chance in this final with the one adaptation they made, which was that wedge they put on that reminds me of some kind of beetle that I can't find the name of, in that it had those two big sort of hooks almost going around the side, looking to get under the sides of that wedge, because the wedge kind of comes down to that point and has that almost sort of chisel edge on the front that gets under things, but beyond that there is ground clearance. And the first time they went head to head, it looked like that might have worked. And if they'd been able to continue that drive and get the drum to contact that wedge and bend it up, maybe there would have been a slight chance. That was the 1 in 100, the 1 to the 99.
Yeah, what could have been, but wasn't. I'm just so damn glad it didn't lose. That Spectre didn't lose a tooth.
Oh, that would have been an anticlimax.
I mean, Spectre would still have won, but it would have been a really lame final.
Yeah. It's over. We've done it.
It's over. We've finished King of Bots. I'll tell you what. Like I really enjoyed watching King of Bots, but watching a show where I didn't understand anything that was said got pretty old towards the end of it. Like in that final episode, I did skip a lot because it was just like, I don't understand any of this, and I couldn't be bothered with it anymore.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Something that I will say again, and I've said before, especially for next series, hopefully this will carry on Twitch, Robot Revo, it's Bradley Hansted, who was with the Megabyte team for every episode except the final, because the final aired while he was already in China for the next series. He's done a live stream with his kind of commentary over. So it's a little bit behind the scenes information, and if nothing else, it's just conversation through the Chinese bits. Usually there's a bit of an explanation of what's going on, not as good as a direct translation, but it keeps you going through those bits. And the videos that he has done have made this 5 times more enjoyable than it would have been if I were just watching it and trying to work out what was going on. And from a podcasting point of view, the information that he's given has been invaluable as well. For example, that's the only way I know the kid's called Alan. That vital piece of information alone came from those live streams. It's really added colour. That's what you want. You want colour to these things.
All good. I'm looking forward to more. Although I am looking forward to watching competition in English again as well, I'm afraid.
I would be if it weren't BattleBots. I'll be honest. Do we want to get into this now, or do we want to save this for another time?
I think we should save it. You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/26. And there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite chocolate biscuit.